everybody, Caleb here. Welcome back to the Mills Guitars Workshop. Now, let me ask you this. What do these three places have in common? We got Brooklyn, London, and Dummerston. What these three places have in common is they're famous bridges. We're going to be working with bridges today, but maybe not quite this kind. We're going to be working with a guitar bridge. And you might think they look awful different, but they have a few things in common. Just like a big bridge that you walk or drive across, it takes you from where you are to where you want to be. A guitar bridge takes the sounds or the vibrations from the strings and puts them in the top or the soundboard. So let's start taking a look at this guitar. You can probably see that it's already got a bridge. So now you think, what are we doing? Job's done. Well, today we're replacing a bridge. There's many reasons for replacing a bridge. They can be broken, they can develop cracks lengthways, or they can come loose from the top, or they can even warp. Today we're replacing this bridge for mostly two reasons. The first one is tonal. It's generally accepted that adjustable bridges like this have a different tone from the non-adjustable ones. This is a personal decision up to the player, and since this is for me, I'm going to put it the way I like it. The second reason for changing out this bridge is to remove these bolts on the top. Over time, the soundboard will bend more and more like this. As it does, these bolts, they don't move, and they put more stress in the top until, wouldn't you know it, you've got two cracks that run perfectly in line with that hardware. So we've got a lot to do. We best get moving on this thing. If we're going to replace this bridge, first thing we need to do is take the old one off. And step one is removing the hardware. Shouldn't take much to get this saddle out. And then we can start working on getting the bolts out. So I've already removed the dots covering the heads to make this a little easier on myself. So it should be as easy as getting the screwdriver and backing them out. It may take holding the nut from the inside to back these out. But let me get to it. These ones are coming pretty easy. Once you've got the nuts off of there, you can just push them from the inside and they should come right out. So with all the hardware out, we're going to move on to actually getting the wood off of there. And to do that, we'll use some heat. So I've had my bridge removal tool heating up for a little while. And all I need to do is put that right on there. And in a short amount of time, that will soften the glue and allow us to separate the pieces. While that heats up, we can take a look at the tools I'm going to use to take that bridge off of there. So what I've got is a couple of artist palette knives that I've sharpened an edge on. I've got two of these, a thinner one that I tend to use more often and a thicker one that's a little more specialty. The thinner one bends a little easier, which allows it to be used a little more precisely and get into harder to reach places with less prying stress. The larger one is stiffer and thicker. I often use it more like a wedge to follow the smaller knife, keeping the two parts separated when working with larger surfaces. So for this job, I'm going to use the smaller knife for the most part, and I'm going to set the larger one to the side. Well, this should have heated up pretty good. Now we can start working on it. I'm going to pretty carefully just slide this in from the back, working left to right. If the bridge is already loose, this won't take much to get it off of here. But I'm just starting with this, and I'm going to hold the heat with one hand while I work with the tool. You don't want to be pulling up and down on this tool. That's a good way to put cracks in your tops that you don't need to happen. All you really want to be doing is working left to right, trying to separate the glue. So when you're heating this up, you want to make sure you get the wings as well, unless they come unstuck first, because usually they're the ones that are gonna jump off of there, and that's gonna be the middle that's well stuck. But this thing is, it was a little loose, so it shouldn't take too much longer to get this thing off of here. I'll take the heat off so I'm not so worried about burning myself and hold on to the guitar so I have good control. You can see my little tool here. I've got some tape on the edge. This is so I can actually work it left to right. I was having trouble beforehand with my fingers on the sharp edges of that blade, trying to cut myself. So I'll put a little bit of tape on there. And now I can work it left to right. Oh, I like. We're just about off of there. Just like that. So now that's off of there, we can set the guitar to the side and start focusing on making a new bridge. The easiest way to start making a new bridge when you have the old one, or even most of the old one, is tracing onto a blank. So we got out the new blank, and we'll trace that on there. Now if I use a regular pencil, that line will be really hard to see against that dark rosewood, so we'll use a white colored pencil to trace, and it should be very visible. So we just get that on there where I know I can see it. And there we go. Now all I gotta do is go cut this out and we'll be a lot farther along. Fortunately, I already have one cut to perfect size. And when you cut this out, you may want to go just a hair oversized compared to the original to make sure you cover up the footprint on top of the guitar. So this one is roughly the right shape. Now what about thickness? So we'll measure the old bridge, and we come up to about 300 thousandths of an inch, 300 thousandths. And what we'll do is we'll make this new one as close to the original as we can. If this were a trouble point, like the original had been shaved too thin, you can make your adjustments here. So we need to take this over to the thickness sander, but nice and conveniently, it's already close enough. The next thing to do is drill the holes. It's easiest to do while this is still flat. So we can use the old bridge as a template. First thing we'll do is pick out a drill bit. We'll want to pick the largest bit that still fits through the holes on the original bridge. So this one seems to be it. It's 3/16. It fits through the holes, and I don't think any bigger bit will go through there. So once we know what size bit we want, and I got my 3/16 bit, we'll just tape the old bridge down to the new bridge. So I'll do that with a piece of double-sided tape, which I've already got right on here. And we'll just stick it down perfectly lined up. So once that's stuck down, we can go over to the drill press, chuck this up, and just drill those holes nice and perfect. So it helps to have a backer board on this to help the holes from tearing out, so the exit holes stay nice and clean. So that's what I've got this board down here for. Now we can just go ahead and get started on this. I may want to bring it just a little bit closer. So now it's time to do some shaping. And you might think, why would I want to take material off? Don't I want the most strength? Well, now we return to our real bridge comparison, and just like a real bridge, strength isn't the only thing you want. You also want some flexibility. We want to allow it to vibrate some, but still be strong enough to hold. So we'll remove some of the extra bulk to allow it to become more flexible without hurting the strength. Like you can see on this bridge, the sides have been thinned out and the back has been rounded over. We need to do that on here. So I'll start out by thinning out these wings. I want them to end up about 100,000ths of an inch thick, and I only want them to come up to about here. I usually just kind of eyeball this line and it's good enough. So what we'll do now is take this over to the thickness sander and thin these down up to that line. So after the wings are done, we'll need to round off the back and soften all the edges. And for rounding off the back, my favorite option is a plane. Not that kind. But maybe that's right. So I like the plane to start rounding off the back. Of course, you could take this to a power sander, or you could file off all of the material. But I like the plane as a more precise option. If you can catch which way the grain is going, it really is not super hard to get this cutting well. One other bulk remover you may want to do at this point is to slightly remove height on each side of the bridge to give it a kind of radius. That'll help make it a little bit more flexible. I've taken quite a bit off here already. And I think I may want to move over to a file. So once I've gotten pretty happy with that, I can set the plane aside and I'll start with a file. I've got a couple of files I like to use. I've got some heavier cut ones that we can still use here to help round this over. And then I've got a lighter cut file for doing the edges where I just need to soften them so they're not sharp. But we'll do some shaping here. Try to get where you can see what's going on. And just start filing away at this rosewood. Try this one, see if it's got a different cut. Yeah, there we go. These hand tools give you a lot of control over what you're doing. You could still take this to like the disc sander or any tool like that and knock a lot of this off, but like this I have a lot of control over what's coming off and when. So that's looking really good. So we'll take the lighter file now and smooth it out. Smooth out the wings. Because your hand is going to rest on here a lot. It's going to come in contact with this bridge a lot. And you'll want it to be nice and smooth. Yeah, that's looking really good. So when you're done filing on the bridge, you may want to take some good finish sandpaper and just touch up the surfaces. And it won't take a whole lot to get it looking real good. So I'll go grab a piece of sandpaper and we'll do a little bit more there. This is just a sheet of 220 sandpaper that I've got laying around. And I'm just gonna lightly finish this off with this. Knock off any of my pencil marks. Help finalize rounding everything over. Smoothing it out. And you know, this isn't going on a new guitar, so a little extra smoothed out is not a bad thing. Because with age, they get a little bit worn in and smoothed out a little bit more, but I think that is looking really good. So, we're done with that sandpaper. Well, our bridge is ready to go on this guitar, but what we really need to do is make sure our guitar is ready for a bridge. So we want to clean off any old glue or finish that sits underneath the bridge, because this one's going to go right where the old one was. I've already gone ahead and removed a whole lot of it. I'm going to just take the last little bit off here. I'm going to use this little rounded edge X-Acto blade, and I just scrape off. And I want to scrape all the way around the footprint of that bridge. And once that's all the way clean, I know that I'll have a really good contact for glue. And really, it's just about ready for glue. So we should be ready to glue this bridge up. One thing we'll want to do is take some of the oils off of the back of this bridge, back of this rosewood bridge. The rosewood has a lot of oils in it, and the glue doesn't bind very well with the oils in there. So we can take that off of there with a little bit of thinner and a towel. So I'll just grab some acetone and a clean towel and just wipe that off. Of course, you want to be careful with the acetone. You don't want to open it into closed of an area. It's really not great to be breathing in. And you don't want to leave it on your fingers for very long at all. But you just wipe this down. And you can see all that oil that comes off of there. That's really, really good at cleaning this stuff up, is these kind of thinners. So I just do this until I'm happy with it. Alright, not a whole lot came off that time, so we should be ready to glue this thing up. So I'll set that there. Move this stuff to the side. And get ready for glue. So we're ready to glue this thing up. What I want to do here is get a thin layer of glue to cover the entire surface. Just to be sure I have coverage, I will do both surfaces. For these kinds of glue ups, I really want to have my paintbrush around. It really helps me get a nice thin coat over the whole thing. It spreads it very evenly, and sometimes there's a little bit of difference or texture in here, and the paintbrush just helps get in all of those little grooves in the wood and everything we need. And just a touch more glue on there. So we want just a thin layer coating the entire thing. Coverage is the most important part here. Do the bridge as well. All right. So once that's good and covered, we'll set the bridge in the right spot. Just set it down there. And I will grab the clamp. To clamp it down, we'll be using a new tool for me. I just got this bridge clamp. It bolts through the pinholes to index the bridge in the right spot. I'm going to put a piece of leather down in the middle. I want to protect this bridge as much as I can from scuffing it with the pieces of metal in this clamp or the screws themselves. I think I want a larger piece. So I just run these bolts down through the outside pinholes. And if they're lined up, everything should go in nice and easy. Just like that. Then I take the wing nuts and the washers and put them on the inside and start tightening that down. I'm just going to get that one started, start the other one. And it helps if you don't cross thread them. Alright, those are getting snug. And then what we do after that is we just slide some pieces of leather in on the wings to help not dent the wings, and we tighten these end ones down. That will help push the wings down, and as this gets tight, that just tightens it to the top. You can probably see I'm starting to get some glue squeeze out. So now what we can do is come through with a clean cloth or a slightly damp cloth and wipe off some excess of glue, all the stuff that squeezes out. That's the nice thing about this clamp, is it stays out of the way, so you can get all the way around the bridge, clean up any of the glue. So this is going to take some time to dry, so we'll let this set up for several hours before we can move on. So now that we've had plenty of dry time, this bridge is well adhered, so the only thing we're missing is a saddle slot. With this setup, we can perfectly place a saddle. So I'll slide in a temporary saddle and we can make sure we're up to tune. Once that's in there, I'll make sure my tuner's on and we'll tune this thing. So now that we're up to tune, we'll check the tuning at the 12th fret. Now the high string is just about perfect. The low string is falling a little bit. The low string is a little sharp. If it's sharp, that means the string is too short and the saddle needs to move backwards. If it's flat, the string is too far from the saddle, that it's too far and it needs to move forwards. Make sure it's perfect. Looks really good. And so does that. So we're looking really good there. So that looks like the right spot, so we'll mark it. I'll take a mechanical pencil, just draw a line across the front of that saddle, all the way across so I can see it real well. And now that it's marked, I can take this whole mess off of here. So I'll just lower these strings. I'll try to save them so we can reuse them when we're actually putting this thing together. We can get rid of this saddle. We don't need it anymore. Lowering strings always takes a whole lot longer than you want it to. We just take that off of there and set it to the side. So now to route this slot, I'll get out the Dremel tool and set up the routing jig. It's basically two parts on the jig. A part that's going to sit flat on the top to raise it up, and then a fence for the router to slide across right against. So what we'll do is we'll get this all lined up here so that when this slides across here, I'm writing right on the back side of that line, and this fence keeps me perfectly in line. So I'll get that all clamped up, and then we'll start taking a look at what it's going to take to get that cut. So I think I've got this set up to ride nice and evenly across the slot. Now for depth, I've actually got a 200 thousandths piece here that I'm going to use as a stop. You're going to want it to cut about 2/3 of the depth. And since I'm just above the top of the bridge here, if I set this up where it's at, it should only allow it to go in 200 thousandths from where it's at. So my bridge is about 300 thousandths of an inch thick, and I want about 2/3, so about 200 thousandths slot. So with my stop set, once I get it nice and tight, it won't allow me to cut any deeper. I won't want to cut this all in one go. I want to make several passes. If I try to do it all in one, I'm going to end up wandering or doing stuff I don't want to. But just like this, I can push up against the back. And to make it a little more foolproof, I've got a couple ends on here just to kind of stop me from going too far. So I believe I'm ready to cut this, and it's about to get pretty loud. So I'll go ahead and get this cut, and we'll come back and get moving on. So we got that saddle slot in there now. So of course what we'll need next is a saddle. And nice and conveniently, I've got one coming along a little ways here. It fits in the slot. The other thing that we still have to do yet is clean out these holes and make sure they're big enough to hold the bridge pins. So I've got the reamer out. I'll go ahead and take the saddle back out of the way. But what we'll do is I'll start running this reamer down the holes to make sure it's big enough to hold the pins, and I know when to stop if I stick my hand on the inside, and the second I start to feel the reamer, that's when I stop. I'm just about there, so I'm making sure it's nice and clean. And there we go. So that one's reamed out. We'll start on the next one. This is a little bit of an involved process, but it really helps clean out all the old glue and make sure those bridge pins drop in there nice and clean. One thing you may want to do after you're done reaming is countersink around the holes just a little bit. I think it gives it just a nice finished look. Helps touch it all up and make it look good. There we go. This is kind of a slow process, but it does help make sure that the holes are just the right size. No bigger than they have to be. Big enough that everything goes in nice and easily. And now that that's done, we are just about ready to start setting this thing up. I can get the pins back out, and we get some strings, put them on here, and get this thing set up. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll see where we are then. Just like that, this thing is set up to play, and it's playing great and sounding great, and it'll last me a real long time like this. So, thanks for joining me on this one so we could cross this bridge together. Hope to see you next time. So long. Bye-bye.
Learn more about Mills Guitars on our website, mills-guitars.com, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@millsguitars. This program was made possible by our generous patrons at patreon.com/millsguitars. Thank you.